Hello and welcome to the Reproductive System Lab. I've got the lab open as usual from the home screen. Um, I just want to point out real quick, and I'll probably say this several times, um, I would like you to refer to your lecture notes to learn the functions of all of the anatomy. I just like my descriptions better than what's in the lab guide because they match with the questions that I'm used to asking. Uh, I am going to use the activities today instead of the full lab guide, but just know that you have it. So looking first at our lab guide activities, I just want to point out a few things that we are not going to do. All right, so, I won't draw on the screen here. But it says, describe the phases of the ovarian and the uterine cycle. We are not doing that. And we're also not talking about the physiological functions of the male and female sex hormones. So it is identifying and stating the function of all of the organs or accessory glands in the male and female reproductive cycle, and being able to identify some of the reproductive tissues, mainly testes and ovaries, and we'll go over that in a little bit. So first up, female reproductive system. This is the anatomy you need to know. If you want to pause this and write down what I say, we can go over the functions real quick, right? The urinary bladder is just going to be to hold urine. The vagina is the birth canal or the site of intercourse. It just depends on your timing. Right? The uterus is the site of fetal development or the womb. The cervix is simply the entrance or exit to the uterus. So it's how the sperm get in and how the baby gets out. The ovaries, the function we're going to focus on for the ovaries is oocyte production. So this is where female gametes are made. You could also write sex hormone production, but mostly what we're concerned with is where do the gametes come from. And then the uterine tubes or oviducts, which we used to call fallopian tubes, are how the oocyte gets from the ovary to the uterus. That is also where fertilization usually takes place, in part because of timing and in part because of the fallopian tubes are actually structured and their physiology is such that they have little pockets where the sperm collect, and they are a conducive environment to sperm living. So the sperm can hang out there for a while and remain viable until an egg passes by. So this is the model that you will see on the practical for the female reproductive system. I have, as usual, on your PowerPoint slides, the pieces of anatomy that you should be able to see on that slide. On this one, like the organs are all intact. They haven't been cut in sagittal section. So this view tends not to show up on the practical, but we can go over it quickly anyways. This is the bladder. Sitting on top of the bladder is the uterus, which then is going to lead down into the birth canal or the vagina. Again, here we're just seeing the outside of everything. On sort of the side wall of the abdominal cavity, this part here is your fallopian tube, and the yellow lump underneath it, which is hard to see, is your ovary. So this is the same view with, can I make this bigger and you still, let me just move that to the side. Now this piece has been removed and you can actually see all the organs cut in cross section. So you've got the bladder, the urethra, which is not on your list of things to know, but also nice to remember that it is separate from the vagina. So bladder, urethra, birth canal or vagina, cervix, and then this whole thing is your uterus, again with ovary and I always want to call them ovarian tubes, oviducts or uterine tubes. So here in this view, you can see a little bit better. This is your uterine tube or oviduct, and this lump right here underneath it is your um, ovary. So what color do I have? This part right here that I'm coloring in, that's all ovary. And then all of this, so just fun to be able to draw on the screen, right? That is your uterine tube or oviduct. And that is your female reproductive system. Then we get into the male reproductive system. Bladder, again, just holds urine. The prostate, there's a number of different components to the prostatic fluid. Um, what I focus on is that it contains enzymes that activate the sperm. So prior to ejaculation, your sperm aren't doing much, and it would be a waste of energy if they were swimming around if they didn't need to be swimming around. So even though they are mature and have the ability to swim, they are sort of asleep, and the prostatic enzymes is the signal to the sperm that they need to start swimming. The urethra in males is going to be the common pathway, for both sperm and urine. And you're going to see when we talk about all the male organs in lecture, there's a gland that sort of neutralizes any urine that might be left over in the urethra before sperm passes through. But that gland doesn't show up on our models, so we don't use it. For the penis, you can just say its function is to deposit sperm in the vagina. The testes is where sperm are produced. So what comes out of the testes is a morphologically mature spermatid. I always forget those terms, which is why I only give you two of them. But it is actually it's a spermatozoa if it's fully mature. Excuse me, morphologically mature. When they exit the testes, they are not motile, so they are not physiologically mature. They mature in the epididymis. So this is the site of sperm maturation in males. Once they are mature, and it is time for them to be deposited into the vagina, that is where the vas deferens comes in. This is a muscular tube that is going to propel the sperm into and through the urethra. So the muscular contractions of the vas deferens, along with some of the pelvic floor muscles, are what propel the sperm through the urethra. Then you have seminal vesicles. The secretion from the seminal vesicles has two important components. One, it's alkaline, and it is alkaline to neutralize the female vaginal mucosa, which is somewhat acidic. It is acidic as a natural and effective antimicrobial agent. The seminal fluid also contains fructose because your sperm are exceedingly small and they don't have any room in them to store any energy. So they're basically nucleus with an engine but no gas tank. So the fructose is in the seminal fluid, and that's where the sperm get their energy to swim up a fallopian tube and find an egg. So then back to the slides. Here is your male reproductive system. You can see almost everything you need to be able to see. All of this is the bladder. It's got some other stuff on top of it, but all of that is bladder. I'm just going down the list here. This walnut size thing here is the prostate, seminal vesicle, testes, epididymis, penis, vas deferens is here. And then you can't see the urethra. You have to pull the front of the penis off to be able to see the urethra. So if we zoom in a little bit on stuff, so we take this and we zoom in down here. This is the testis. This is where the sperm are made. This is where meiosis takes place. And then this is the epididymis where they mature. And the vas deferens is going to run through this structure here, but you can't see the vas deferens. It's got connective tissue and blood vessels around it. But this larger structure here is called the spermatic cord. So that, if you can see here, contains the vas deferens, and it goes up over and in front of the pubic bone. So this is your pubic bone right here, and then runs over the back of the bladder and meets up with the urethra and the prostate. So then in this slide here with the penis and cross section or sagittal section, you can see the urethra. So if the arrow is on the outside, you're supposed to identify it as the penis, and if the arrow is pointing to the tube in the middle, then you are supposed to identify it as the urethra. Let's see, moving right along. This is now a close-up view of this part, and we've removed the bladder and seminal vesicle and the outside of the prostate. So this is now sagittal section through the bladder and sagittal section through the prostate. This right here is where the vas deferens dumps the sperm into the prostatic urethra. So this little part there is called the ejaculatory duct, and this is the prostatic urethra. What else do we want to know? Then zooming in on this part again, now we're looking at the same structure, but the outside is intact. So you can see prostate again, seminal vesicle, all of this is bladder. And then this line here, which where did I highlight it somewhere, right? That I highlighted in blue on this slide. That is the vas deferens. And that's your male reproductive system. Again, pretty straightforward. Then we get into the histology. This is one of our histology slides, and that should be IS. I always want to spell it with an E. This is a testis. What do you want to do? You want to be able to identify. So if you see this, say that it is testis. Each one of these circular structures with the hole in the middle is a seminiferous tubule. And the little triangular clumps of cells that you find outside of the seminiferous tubules are the interstitial cells. So what you want to know is that inside of the seminiferous tubules is where spermatogenesis takes place. And then the interstitial cells, these cells here and this clump over here, this is where testosterone comes from. So the next slide here is of ovary. If I move that, it's going to screw it up. I just want to zoom in real quick, forget the arrows for now. So the whole thing is ovary. What you want to be able to identify are follicles. And I just wanted to point out, if you look here and here, you've got this little blue line here and that blue line there. That's kind of what I look for to find the oocyte. And then I know that whatever is surrounding it, so everything that I'm circling here, that's a small follicle with an oocyte in the middle. And this is a much larger follicle with an oocyte here, and now it's got this fluid-filled cavity, which is called an antrum. Let me just leave that. And then this is another follicle over here. So if you get good at spotting there's another oocyte, you can find sort of immature primordial follicles, developing follicles like secondary follicles, and then fully mature vesicular follicles. But all you need to do is be able to say that this is ovary when you see it. And if I point out something that looks like this, or something slightly bigger that looks like this, just be able to say this, that is a follicle. You cannot see the oocyte in this follicle because it was not in the plane of section like it is in this one, but this follicle somewhere, either behind the plane of your computer screen or in front of the plane of your computer screen, would have a follicle. That is anything that you might see on the lab exam. I don't put sperm on the lab exam because it's just too easy. And they're actually really hard to see because they're totally small. Um, what else? Anything else just to let you know? Your worksheet is the same as usual, so click on that, fill it out, submit it. Um, and the lab quiz is the same as usual. This is also in Canvas, so hopefully you're used to taking the lab quizzes in Canvas by now. Um, I think that's it. It's pretty straightforward. Know everything, know the function of everything, and refer to your lecture notes for the functions.